So you want to learn Spanish. Many people spend a few years in school studying Spanish, but when they graduate, they can't even hold a simple conversation in Spanish. But on the bright side, at least they know how to conjugate a few words, which they will forget the second they graduate. If you haven't guessed by the thumbnail, there's much more efficient ways to learn Spanish on your own. When people like you and me say we want to learn Spanish, it doesn't mean that we want to have perfect grammar. It means that we want to easily have full-paced, fluent conversations with natives, ideally to impress Spanish women, obviously. We want to read Spanish books without translating every word, hopefully to impress the Spanish women, obviously. And we want to be able to watch Spanish TV shows without subtitles, to impress Spanish women, obviously. What we don't want is to consciously think about using correct grammar every word. We want it to come naturally, like in our native language. The problem is, most people think that apps such as Duolingo is the best way to learn fast. And while knowing a few catchphrases like, "a boy eats apples" and "I like milk" is nice, it's not really what we're looking for. Maybe you've even taken it a step further than Duolingo and done some research on YouTube, but watching 89 videos on how to learn Spanish, none of which actually contains a single word of Spanish, isn't really what we want either. Because at some point you have to, actually learn stuff. So, what can you do that isn't Duolingo and doesn't require you to actually move to a Spanish-speaking country? Let me introduce you to the comprehensible input method. Basically, it means that you consume content that is understandable to you. The point isn't to understand every word or every grammar point. The point is to understand enough to be able to figure out the rest based on the context. The reason why this method is so much better is because you don't learn the translation from English to Spanish. You learn based on the context, or what you see on the screen. This way, you form connections exactly like you've done in your native language. The comprehensible input method can be split into a 3-step roadmap. The first step is listening. A baby literally spends about a whole year doing nothing but listening, and since we want to know Spanish like we know our native language, why not learn it the way we learned our native language? So, try to consume as much content as possible. I highly recommend using this website called Dreaming Spanish. It has a ton of videos purely in Spanish that you can sort from easiest to hardest, and simply begin from the easiest. Once you get better, you can start incorporating TV shows, movies, and videos from Spanish YouTubers. They will teach you a lot of words and sentences that you will actually hear in normal conversations. When you don't have time to watch content, podcasts are literally a cheat code. You can get so many hours of listening when you're driving or when you're in the gym. Step 2, reading and writing. Now, reading children's books and graded readers are a great way of learning, but reading books made for children can get very tiring. Unless you're, this guy? Therefore, I found 3 other ways to incorporate reading Spanish into your daily life. The first method is changing the language on your phone and PC to Spanish. Whenever you have to do something like Googling, make sure to do it in Spanish. The second method is to follow Spanish-speaking people on social media. Whenever they post, read the caption and try to understand the main points. Lastly, the third method is to play video games in Spanish. Especially games with a lot of dialogue can be very beneficial, or if you're a big Clash of Clans enthusiast, try joining a Spanish clan. Now, for practicing writing, I once again have 3 fun ways to practice. The first method is joining some Spanish groups and communities on Discord. This way you'll get a chance to text in Spanish, and it'll force you to write new sentences as you never know what the other person is going to say. The second method is using AI as a sparring partner. Simply open ChatGPT, give it a prompt like this, and start chatting about everything that's on your mind. The last method is exploring Reddit communities and reading through posts. First try to understand what the thread is about, then try to write an appropriate response with your own arguments or opinions. The third and final step is speaking. Most people think speaking should be practiced from the beginning, but speaking is output, not input. That means that when speaking, no new information is actually entering your brain, and that's the opposite of what we want. As a beginner, you simply want to soak up as much of the language as possible, because you don't know what the language is supposed to sound like. As a result, you will develop bad pronunciation habits. This happens because your brain tries to guess how the words are supposed to sound like. It's much better to delay speaking until you've got a very solid grasp of the language, because then you can engage in conversations and learn to actually communicate with others. But talking to others can be a big step. So, to get comfortable with speaking, begin by making up your own conversations. Try to think in Spanish and say your thoughts out loud. Tell yourself about how your day has been. You can even record yourself and listen to your own voice to hear what you need to improve on. And that pretty much sums up the journey of learning Spanish.